Okay, activate Tekking101 jacket protocol. What's that theme from? That theme is from something. Do 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 do. You know what that's from? That's from, oh my god, okay. Mega Man NT Warrior. That's from when they do the cross fusion. That's what that's from. Oh my god, that unlocked, wow, okay. That was a good show. Mega Man NT Warrior, that was great. You know, the English dub, the main character was actually voiced by the same guy that did Light Yagami. So Light Yagami is this, like, brilliant, like, Machiavellian evil, like, you know, it's like, I will write everyone in the Death Note. I will eat potato chips. But then, like, he was in Mega Man NT Warrior. It's like, come on, Mega Man, let's cross fuse. You know, just like, oh, the anime world is crazy and weird. Okay, so today, yes, we are going to be talking about the Empresses of Amazon Lily, the island of the tribe of the Kuja, the island of women where men dare not tread. Unless you're Luffy, and Kobe, and Law, and Blackbeard now. So plenty of men have now invaded the island, but they managed to get fought back every single time. So, and Rayleigh too, but Rayleigh sort of gets like a special treatment because he helped out Boa at some point, you know, when in the past, okay? There's actually a lot of stuff involving the past with like Boa and her sisters and Rayleigh and Shakky, as we will find out with this, you know, new revelation that Shakky is actually a previous Empress of Amazon Lily. So just back off for that for a moment. There's also Granny Nyon, and yeah, there's just like a lot of stuff here, a lot of moving parts. And then there's even a connection to the Sun Pirates because of the whole thing with the slave mark and everything. So, okay. I don't even know where to honestly start with this. Okay, so Boa Hancock is the current Empress of Amazon Lily. Okay, she is 31 years old, and it was mentioned by Granny Nyon way back in the Amazon Lily arc, which remember took place before the time skip, so she was 29 back then, that she had been the Empress and the Warlord for 11 years prior to that, okay? So that means she became the Empress of Amazon Lily when she was 18 years old, okay? And it was very shortly after that, like it was the same year when the government, you know, invited her to join the 7 Warlords of the Sea. Now, there was a little bit of information given on exactly why they made Boa an Empress at such a young age and when she just became the Empress of the island, because when you become the Empress of the island, you also become the captain of the Kuja pirate crew, all right? So she was given a bounty of 80 million, but like almost immediately after being issued that bounty, the government like decided she was big enough of a threat that, okay, we need to invite her to join the Warlords. And for that reason, we don't know when all the Warlords joined, but the ones that we do know about, Boa has been a member for the longest. I mean, it's abolished now. There are no more Warlords of the Sea, but she was a member for the longest time. Mihawk might have been a Warlord for longer. Same thing with Doflamingo, because Doflamingo is also sort of a special case. So yeah, Boa Hancock has been a Warlord for the last 13 years, right up until it was abolished, so she has a fair amount of seniority with her, okay? Now, Granny Nyon also goes on to say that the main reason why she became a warlord, why the government made her a warlord so quickly, and they feared her power, was mainly because, and I'm sure there was a bunch of different reasons, like she did have the love fruit at that point, so maybe the government knew how terrifying that power was, just like how Kobe and Blackbeard found out in the last chapter. But the main reason why the government made her a warlord so quickly was because of the exploits of her predecessor, the previous Empress and the previous captain of the Kuja Pirates and Amazon Lily, okay? And so we don't know exactly what happened with her. Granny Nyon said that she was dead, but she also said that the second generation back was also dead, and that would have been Shakky, and Shakky, unless she's a zombie, pretty sure she's alive. So, you know, there's some issues with that. We'll get back to that in a moment, right? So here's the way I think that this shook down, okay? The previous Empress of Amazon Lily and the previous captain of the Kuja really made a name for herself across the seas. I mean, maybe the Kuja pirates existed for a long time, or maybe the previous Empress was the one that actually founded the Kuja pirates, or really put their name on a map, went out there pillaging and doing piratey deeds. And the government was like, oh my god, these Kuja pirates, they're so terrifying. You know, they rule the calm belt. We can't even attack them. Keep in mind, this was long before Vegapunk had the Sea Prism stone-coated ships. So there was no way for the Marines to directly attack Amazon Lily back then, so they were probably very terrifying, okay? They could go out of the island, head into the Grand Line, pillage whatever they wanted, attack Marine bases, and head back to Amazon Lily, and there wasn't really much the Marines could do about that. So whatever happened to the previous Empress, we're not really sure. Boa takes over when she's 18 years old, and then she becomes the new captain of the Kuja, and it's very clear that she's just going to continue the legacy of the Kuja and continue being pirates and everything like that. And so the government instantly issued her an 80 million berry bounty. No small change considering this was Boa's first ever bounty when she just became a pirate, you know what I mean? That's a big deal. It's more impressive than Luffy's first bounty even, right? Okay, this was like immediately after she became the Empress. And so the government, like, okay, give her 80 million berries. Actually, you know what? We don't even want to deal with her and the Kuja. Just make her a warlord, okay? And then boom, then we can have like the balance of power maintained. Also, something important to bring up, the warlord system did not always exist. And if you go by what was stated in the OVA 3D2Y, the one with Burn D World and everything, the warlord system had only come into existence within the last 30 years or so. Now, that was an OVA, it's non-canon, but they did say that. They did say that because when Burn D World, he was an Impel Down level 6 for over 3 decades. When he got out, he learned about the warlord system, and he's like, what the hell is that? And then someone actually had to explain to him the whole idea of like privateers working for the government and stuff like that. And then Burn D World's like, well, that's kind of stupid, but whatever. I guess I could use that to my advantage. And then he, had the plan to like capture Boa and her sisters and everything like that. Okay, so I don't know, it might be canon, might not, but the warlord system wasn't always a thing. Okay. So, who knows? I mean, maybe Boa might have been one of the first generation members of the Warlords for all we know in One Piece. Who knows? Or maybe like the next generation after. Okay, so she becomes a Warlord. Her 80 million bounty is frozen immediately, which was her first starting bounty. So that's why that's so low relative to like all the other really strong pirates in the world, okay? And why her new bounty jumped all the way to like 1.6 billion. It makes sense, right? Why that would happen, okay? So, as for the previous Empress, it was stated by Granny Nyon that she, as well as the Empress before her, who we actually find out is Shakky, Rayleigh's wife, who lives with him on, not Amazon Lily, on the Sabaody Archipelago, they also died as well. And the reason for their death was given as the love sickness. So remember what happened when Boa met Luffy. It was love at first sight right there. Luffy was kind of an idiot, but it was endearing, I guess, to her, and she instantly falls head over heels in love with Luffy. However, she's a member of the Kuja, and so it's like her body didn't know how to process it, so it basically begins to shut down. So she, gets an insanely high fever, and she's like in bed, like writhing in pain to the point where she's like, am I gonna die from this? And Granny Nyon is like, yes, you will. Unless you follow your heart, because love is always a hurricane, whatever. So the idea is that every Empress of Amazon Lily eventually falls in love with a man from outside of the island, and they have a choice. They can either stay with their people on Amazon Lily, and they can succumb to the love sickness and they can die, or they can leave Amazon Lily and pursue happiness, and in this case, they will in fact live. However, they will sort of be be distant from the tribe. Granny Nyon came back. Maybe the person she fell in love with eventually passed away, and so she returned to the island that way. And then she was sort of viewed as like a hermit or something. Like, just go live on the outskirts of the island, for you abandoned your people. Because the duty of the Empress is to be the Empress, is to be the captain of the pirate crew, to be a symbol of the strength of the Kuja, and to abandon all that to go and seek something selfish like love is seen as, like, to most of the Kuja back then anyway, maybe the current generation like Margaret and Sweet Pea and everybody, maybe they would view it differently because they have a lot more interactions with men. They had interactions with Luffy and then the Heart Pirates when they were staying there briefly, and so clearly, Blackbeard is a problem, but other than that, you know what I mean? So they might have like a different viewpoint going forward after this. But that was the situation that happened with Gloriosa at Nyon. She came back and she was able to survive, but now she lives on the outskirts of the village. And the story with Gloriosa, Grandma Nyon, there's still a lot of pieces and parts of this we don't know, but from what we understand, her role in this, and it's actually even messed up considering the way that Boa treated her at the beginning of the Amazon Lily arc, where she was literally like treated like that old man at the beginning of the Emperor's New Groove, where Kuzco has this old man like thrown out of the palace. That's pretty much what Boa does to Grandma Nyon, which is messed up because Grandma Nyon was actually the one that saved her and her sisters way back in the day, all right? So the story goes like this. When Boa Hancock and Sandersonia and Marigold were little kids, they were essentially apprentice pirates on the Kuja pirate ship. They were attacked by a Tenryubito vessel, they were captured and brought to Marijois as slaves, and they were branded with the sigil of the Celestial Dragons, and they were tortured, and there was a lot of horrible things that happened to Boa in her backstory. It's one of the most traumatic backstories of any character in the One Piece world, okay? So eventually, Fisher Tiger, with his mighty powers, he scales the entire Red Line and, like, basically razes all of the Tenryubito's holy city. He sets it all on fire, okay? And he frees as many slaves as he can. And in the process, Boa and her sisters escape. However, Fisher Tiger was not able to, like, take every single slave and make sure they get back home. All he could do was make sure that they were freed, okay? So Boa and her sisters managed to escape, but they were essentially stuck, you know, in the cracks of the Red Line. They really had nowhere to go, you know, how to get back home. They didn't know how to get back to Amazon Lily, and even if they know how to get back there, I mean, it's in the Calm Belt. It's really hard to get to, and they're fugitives now, branded with the symbol of the Celestial Dragons, okay? If anybody sees you with that symbol, you are an escaped slave, and, like, that's not going to end well for you either, okay? So they were basically living in terror, you know, in the cracks of the Red Line, as Gloriosa said, and then eventually, when she left Amazon Lily to go and pursue, you know, whoever she fell in love with, she eventually found them. And then also Rayleigh and Shakky helped them as well return back to Amazon Lily, which is the messed up thing, whereas Gloriosa was the one that basically helped them get back home, and Boa treats her so horribly at the beginning of the Amazon Lily arc. It's awful. It's like, Granny Nyon, what are you doing in my office? Get out of here, you know? I'm sorry, you threw off the Empress's groove and then just threw her out of the damn window. However, she's still pretty badass. She got thrown out of like a 10-story window and she landed on her feet like a damn cat. And she's like, I may be old, but I'm still a member of the Kuja, you know? So there you go. Granny Nyon, don't mess with her, right? So, yeah, that was the backstory with Granny Nyon. Now, how does this tie into Shakuyaku, or Shakky's backstory? Well, there's even more that we don't know about this. But Shakky is the bartender and the owner and proprietor of Shakky's Ripoff Bar, which is conveniently located in Grove 13 of the Sabaody Archipelago. So if you're ever hanging out in the Sabaody Archipelago and you want some reasonably, really, really crazy expensive drinks, go check out Shakky's Ripoff Bar, located in the lawless lands of the Sabaody Archipelago. She is also Rayleigh's wife, and this was stated in, I can't remember exactly where it was stated, but the way that Rayleigh refers to Shakky, or the way that Shakky refers to Rayleigh in Japanese literally translates to person of my household. It's like reserved exclusively for the way that a wife would talk to her husband, or a husband would talk to their wife. Okay, so it's like, I don't think they got married like in a church or anything like that. They're common law married, if nothing else, but they're just like living together. There's clearly a relationship going on with the two of them, right? So yeah, basically what I think happened here, and there's still a lot of things that Oda could twist around with this, but basically what happened is that Shakky took up the reins as Empress and captain of the Kuja Pirates. She went out to sea. It was mentioned by her, actually, that Garp chased her around a lot when she was like younger, back like 40 years ago. So Shakky is 64 right now, looking really good, I have to say. The way that Shakky looks right now is very similar to the way that Oda drew Nami at age 60, like even the same hairstyle. So I guess when you get to like age 60, you just adopt like the Uma Thurman, you know, Pulp Fiction kind of Bob sort of hairstyle or whatever. I think it looks good, right? And so anyway, Shakky is 64 right now. So 40 years ago, she would have been 24, right? If we're just going along with the logic that most, you know, if you're going to become the Empress, you usually become the Empress when you're 18 years old, like what happened with Boa, probably happened with Shakky. So she became Empress, I guess, at the same age. And then she, you know, spent the next, you know, 6 years traveling around. around, and she was a pirate captain, so she was attacked a lot by the Marines and everything like that. She might have had dealings with the Rocks crew. That's, like, honestly something that a lot of people thought of because, you know, Garp had direct dealings with the Rocks pirates, and Shakky was mentioned to be like, oh, I was chased around by Garp, you know, 40 years ago. So that was around the time when the Rocks crew was active. I don't really think right now that Shakky was a member of Rocks' crew. I mean, maybe she was, but I like to think that she was just another prominent pirate captain, another prominent crew during that era, during the time period when Rocks was like at their apex of power. The Kuja pirates were also, you know, making waves in the Grand Line and stuff like that, right? So at some point, though, she met Rayleigh, which would also make sense if the Kuja pirates were really active. This was the same time the Roger pirates were really active. So I guess at some point they fought, and Shakky met Rayleigh, and, you know, it was love at first sight. I like to think maybe they fought and they were sort of flirting while they were fighting. You know, like, you know, Rayleigh takes out his sword and clashes with Shakky, and Shakky has, like, the Kuja, like, the snake or whatever. Maybe she added armament hockey onto the snake and, like, blocked the sword or whatever. And, you know, and she's smoking a cigarette or something, just like, my goodness, you're really strong, Dark King Silvers Rayleigh. And Rayleigh's like, ah, I see, you're a pretty strong as well, Snake Princess, whatever. Like, I'm not great at it, but you know what I mean? They might have been a lot more, like, flirty with it, okay? And it's like they eventually just, they were enemies for a while, but then, you know, after the Roger pirates disbanded, maybe she's like, you know, this was 24 years ago, 25 years ago, they disbanded, and so maybe Rayleigh at that point was like, all right, I'm gonna go and, you know, get married, I guess. I don't know. And then maybe at that same time, you know, Shakky also decided to stop being an empress, and she left because she fell in love with Rayleigh. And so they got together and they moved to the Sabaody archipelago and opened a bar up together. The ultimate dream. You know, that's just how it goes, right? So when Granny Nyon said, you know, the last two empresses fell to this illness and they died, I don't think she was being literal with it. Or rather, remember, she was like maybe trying to scare Boa, because at that point she really wanted Boa to go to Marineford. And I think at that moment Granny Nyon realized, wait a second, Boa has the love sickness, she's clearly in love with Luffy, so if I manipulate this, I can get her to listen to Luffy and maybe go to Marineford and save our people. Okay, so maybe that was the reason why Granny Nyon maybe exaggerated the truth a little bit, okay? Because when Granny Nyon saw Shakky in the last chapter, she didn't act surprised. Like, what? Shakuyaku, you're still alive? You know, she seemed pretty chill, like she already knew, and obviously she would already knew, because Gloriosa, Rayleigh, and Shakky worked together to help, you know, Boa get back. Wait a second, this doesn't make any sense now. Holy crap, wait. Okay, I guess maybe... Okay, hold on. What was that chapter again? Okay, here we are. It's at the end of chapter... By the way, this is my favorite cover that Oda's ever done on the Tankobons. I love volume 53. I love the green and, like, the rainbows in the background, and Luffy's walking on all the different colored snakes. There's Boa, Marigold, and Sandersonia, which, by the way, Sandersonia is my favorite of the Boa sisters. I mean, Boa's whatever, but Sandersonia, I mean, come on now. All right, so here's Boa being sick. All right. So Granny Nyon says, you know, yes, I'm afraid it's fatal. The previous Empress died of this illness, as did the Empress before her. The truth is, I was afflicted by it as well, but I survived by fleeing this land. Okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense, because Boa and her sisters have already met Rayleigh and Shakky at this point, because they helped them get back to Amazon Lily when they were teenagers. So her saying that the previous Empress before her died was basically like saying Shakky died, but Boa Hancock should know at this point that Shakky is still alive. So I don't know if that's so much of a plot hole as that's just maybe Granny Nyon being like, oh, they died as in, like, they gave up their duties as empresses to be with the ones that they love. You have a choice you need to make, Boa. Might have been something like that. I don't really know. But anyway, yeah. So for that reason, I mean, like, the mystery that is Shakky, I mean, like, we already kind of could tell, you know, she's already really powerful. I mean, I always got that vibe from her. I always thought that, like, okay, she used to be a pirate way back in the day when being a pirate on the Grand Line was a lot difficult, you know, a lot more difficult than it is now. So, you know, this is during Roger's day and even before Roger's day, you know, like 40-something years ago, or back when Roger was like a rookie or whatever. So, you know, I always thought Shakky was really powerful. She might have a devil fruit. I mean, there's really no reason why she can't have one. You know, I guess there was a theory for a while that the love fruit is sort of like passed down through the Empresses of Amazon Lily, because we used to think that the previous Empresses were always dead, but clearly that's not the case right now. So, you know, she could have another kind of devil fruit that she'd have just never showcased before. Ooh, what if she's a zone? What if Shakky, like, turns into something like I don't know, she turns into like a giant leopard or something. I guess not a leopard because that was Lucci's, but like a cheetah. I think there was a cheetah fruit, but that was in the that was in anime only. Or I don't know, some kind of large, you know, jungle cat or something like that would be really badass. That'd be really cool. You know, she could be a zone. She could have a paramecia. It's just like, it's the same thing like with Rayleigh. Like, Rayleigh doesn't really take his sword out very often unless there's a serious issue going on. Like, you know, like when Rayleigh was stopping the Marines, you know, to go after the Straw Hats, or when he clashed with Kizaru, or, you know, just recently in the last chapter when he was trying to intimidate Blackbeard, you know, he'll bring his sword out. But normally he's not really going to do that, right? Same thing with Shakky. I mean, Shakky's retired. She runs her bar. I mean, there's really no reason for her to, like, you know, if she does have a devil fruit ability, to bust it out unless there's really a reason for it, right? So, yeah, but she could. If not, she definitely knows hockey, and she stays in good shape very clearly. So, you know, she could definitely fight if she wanted to. And she's younger than Rayleigh as well. I mean, I like to think, like, the prime of your youth in the One Piece world, like, the strongest you could possibly be, is like in your 40s, because that's how old Garp was when he fought at God Valley, and that's when he was like really strong. Roger was there too at like his prime. So like your mid 40s, maybe like getting into your 50s, that's like Katakuri as well. That's like when you're the strongest, okay? And then now you're starting to get like into your 70s and 80s. You've weakened quite a bit. Rayleigh is almost 80 years old. We don't know how old Granny Nyon is, but you know, 3 generations back, you know, she could easily be in her 70s or 80s or maybe even 90s. You know, there's not a lot of One Piece characters that are in their 90s. Haradis is in his 90s, but he's not a fighter. He's one of the wizards from Weatheria. And Stroyzen is in his 90s, but once again, not a fighter. He is just the head chef of Totland. You know, and then obviously Dr. Kureha, who's 140, but I think there's something else going on with Dr. Kureha. I'm actually more and more buying the whole, like, the immortal surgery, the ageless surgery was performed on her, okay? That was something that was brought up by Artor and Gemini when they did their Return to Reverie, like, fan chapter. But, like, that would be so funny if Dr. Kureha was like, you know, do you want to see the secret to how I stay so young? And it turns out, like, nobody ever asks her about it. But it actually is going to be the Oppi Oppi no Mi. Like that, I could totally see Oda doing that, okay? Because, yeah, she's 140-something years old. No other human in the One Piece world is even close to being that old. Now, she is a doctor, so maybe she has, like, you know, special tonics or whatever to keep herself, you know, young and, well, her body in, like, good shape and everything like that. But I don't know. I think there's something else going on with Kureha, right? Okay. So, yeah, now, as for the previous Empress, I still think there's going to be something going on with her, okay? She might be dead, but I think there is a story here that needs to be revealed, because now we know Nyon is the 3rd generation back, and Shakky is the 2nd generation back, so we still need to find out about the Empress that was, like, right before, you know, Boa. You know, what was the circumstances that led to her stepping down or dying, and then ended up, you know, Boa Hancock becoming the new Empress of Amazon Lily 13 years ago at age 18, and then also becoming a warlord. So I still think there's some flashback stuff that needs to be seen here, right? Absolutely as well. So anyway, yeah, that's the video. Just wanted to talk a little bit there about the whole situation with Shakky. It was surprising, but it's like we didn't know a lot about her already, so like finding out that she was the previous Empress, that was sort of like, okay, that's a good basis for her character, and I think we can find out a lot more stuff about her going forward from this point on, okay? All right, so with that being said, let us now have Monkey Facts! Ook, ook, ak, ak. Time for monkey facts. Ook, ook, ak, ak. Time for monkey facts. I don't know. Don't have an intro yet, so make one if you want to. All right. So, this was originally supposed to be, I was going to talk about spider monkeys, because spider monkeys are, like, my favorite kind of monkeys, because they're really cool, and they have a cool name and everything like that. I will do spider monkeys next, because I have to do a whole preamble now about something else I found out. Okay. So there's a little bit of geographical, historical facts, but whatever. Monkeys are also tied to this, okay? So there's old world monkeys and there's new world monkeys as like two different classifications. And as you would probably imagine, the old world monkeys live in Africa, and the New World monkeys live in South America and Central America, okay, like in the Amazon rainforest. So if you look at a map, you can clearly tell that South America and Africa used to be sort of together. They're sort of separated right now. But back in the day, they used to be together. I mean, they clearly fit together, right? Okay, back when the, Pangea was a thing, okay? So I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, well, what if, like, the evolutionary line started when South America and Africa were still one continent, and then it split? So, some monkeys were on this side, ended up in South America, other monkeys stayed in Africa, and there's different evolutionary lines. Well, sort of, kind of, that's what happened, but not exactly. So this split occurred around 40 million years ago during the Eocene period. And at that time, South America and Africa were not, like, fused together. They were already separated. This is roughly speaking what the world looked like back about 50, 40 million years ago, okay? So there was a gap there in between Africa and South America, but what people think happened was that the monkeys actually did a thing called vegetation raft or island hopping. So basically, at that point, the Atlantic Ocean was a lot more narrow in between South America and Africa, and there were a lot of islands that were kind of like chained, sort of like an island chain in between. So people think that at that point it would have been feasible for certain monkeys to travel from Africa through this island hopping, and then as everything separated, they ended up so far away they couldn't go back to Africa, and they ended up in South America instead, and then that's where we get like spider monkeys that are evolved there. Okay, and this is something that has happened before. There's a species of spider called the happy-faced spider. Oh, look at him. He looks so adorable. He's got a happy little smiley face on his back. Oh, that's cool. And they are actually in Hawaii, right? But the idea is that they actually traveled there back when the world was separating and like continents were still closer together and there was less ocean in between them or whatever. And so they actually landed on the islands of Hawaii, and throughout the years, they traveled island hopping back when there was still land there. There's not land there anymore, but back when there was. And so there's like this nice little map of distribution of the happy-faced spider in Hawaii. Kind of the same thing where back then monkeys were able to travel from island to island easier. There was more land in between, and then eventually the continents just separated, and then there's no more way for them to get back. Now there's an entire ocean that separates South America and Africa, right? But anyway, yeah, so that's the origin of how New World monkeys came to be, and the differences between Old World monkeys, and spider monkeys are very prominent in the Amazon rainforest, so we'll talk about them next time. Pretty cool. Later, everybody. Tekking, signing out.